We say to girls,
What is your podcast?
you can have ambition, but not too much.
Gonna be yapping and cackling away?
Naturally.
If I looked feminine, I would not be taken seriously.
I'm just a girl.
It's amazing how much you can get if you quietly, clearly, and authoritatively
Like
demand
lips.
it.
Oh, the lips? Yeah. Like these? Yeah. Oh, like the lip gloss. It's pop color. I just wanted to let you know that I liked Wednesday.
Thanks, because you know that I'm not a makeup girly.
No.
I wish I was. And you know from personal experience from having to, in a moment of panic, try and fix my face.
Yes. A true bonding moment.
Yeah,
We've
I
had so
tried.
many of those.
Yes, we really have. I tried to do eyeshadow and it just did not go well.
The vision was there. The
Yeah.
execution, we don't even need to revisit that. It's fine. We made it work. So Amber, it's October. It's fall. We are like in full fall mode here
Yes.
in
Oh, well,
Washington.
Becca, you're giving away our secrets because it's not going to be October when this episode comes out.
Yes,
we
it is.
need to pretend that this is in real time.
It's going to be we're going to release this in October.
Okay, we're going to release this in October, allegedly. We'll see. Wait, we got to show off. If you're watching on YouTube, which if you're not, you should check us out on YouTube. We have our giant mugs. Hers is much cuter than mine. The Bumblebee
Yes.
mug from
Isn't
season
that so
1.
cute? From season 1. It's back. I was like, I've been drinking from just my regular glass that you told me not to drink from anymore in season 1.
Yes,
So
one
let
of
me
my
bring this back out.
many hypocritical moments.
So I have, because it's fall, I have a pumpkin cream chai, and it is delicious. This is why I delayed recording. I was like, I need some pumpkin spice in my life today.
How very girl in the market of you. I'm proud. If I had had that option at home, I would have gone for that. I just have black coffee. I'm a black coffee girl. My mug says it's official, you're awesome, which we all knew.
We all knew that, but I appreciate the edification of yourself for that.
Yes. Yeah. So just in case anybody's not watching on YouTube today, they just needed a picture painted.
So here in Washington, fall is in full flow. We got the colors changing. We have the foliage. And I love it because I was never really a fall girly when I was in Florida because we didn't have any of this. I didn't do pumpkin spice, anything. But now I'm hooked. It's different in Hawaii, I'm sure. Like, what does fall even look like over there?
Exactly the same as summer. In my studio right now, it's actually maybe a little warmer than summer. We do like to do the pumpkin spice and pretend that it looks like fall outside.
Okay.
The surf changes a little bit. Those are our 2 seasons are like high surf and low surf, better surf and lamer surf. The surf's been a pretty big bummer for the surf crowd this summer. That's pretty much it. We don't really have seasons. Wet, dry season, kind of, too. That's about it.
I like the better surf and lamer surf.
Yeah.
I like that's a good distinguisher. So aside from pumpkin spice things, what are you thinking about when you think of October?
When I think of October, I'm always like, holy cow, it's almost Halloween. And then I realize this is how my brain works, in case anyone was wondering. I realized, last November, I was like, I'm going to be really on top of making a really good Halloween costume. Once again, for the millionth year in the row, I didn't do that, so I won't have a good Halloween costume. And then I'm like, holy cow, it's Halloween, it's Thanksgiving, which means it's basically Christmas. That's where my head's at. I'm already at Christmas.
Okay, but you're not decorating for Christmas yet, right?
I fear the backlash if I make a public statement on that.
Okay, we'll protect your privacy today. Okay. I had a conversation about this recently. I was quizzing one of my dates. I was like, when do you decorate for Christmas? Because I'm judging if he's going to be a good match or not. And I was like,
New litmus test.
New litmus test. And he's like, after Thanksgiving. And I was like, that is correct. What day after Thanksgiving? He said December 1st, which is fine, but not my ideal. I was like, no. It's the day after Thanksgiving. That is when you begin, because we are officially Christmas season. Waiting till December 1st, you barely have any time for your Christmas decor.
Yeah.
But I know some people who have it up now. And
I mean,
psychopaths.
if it's up for too long, it's like less special to me.
Right.
But if I know that I'm going to be traveling a lot over the holidays, I really like to enjoy it at my house. So I use that as justification to put it up a little bit early some years. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to give you a date of when I put it up. It does not matter. If it brings me joy, then you can all just be happy for me. But yeah, I kind of base it off that because I don't want it up like, you know, a huge chunk of the year. It's just less special.
Okay.
Yeah. I do have a really pretty tree, just for the record.
Well, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. You will. You all will.
Oh, good. Is it a palm tree?
No. Well, I do have a lot of those outside, but I do
Right.
have like a pretty traditional tree. Yeah.
All right. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because we're only in October.
Well, you asked where my brain went.
I know.
It goes straight to Christmas. Okay. So if you're listening to this podcast in July, Merry Christmas, everyone. Okay.
Christmas in July. You're very delayed in listening, by the way, if you're
Yeah.
waiting until then.
You should really subscribe. Automatic downloads. Thanks.
You should. So welcome to the second season of Two Girls in the Market. I am Rebecca Daniels, coming from Washington State. And my lovely co-host is Amber Haley from Hawaii.
Aloha.
So today we're talking about another big special thing that happens in October, and it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
It's weird to me that Becca chose green. So I thought pink was the obvious choice for today, but that's okay.
I'm not a pink girly.
This is Two Girls in the Market. Like, you gotta be a little bit on brand. Okay, we can sideline that conversation. It's for Becca's
Colors
year-end
don't have
review.
genders, okay?
That's so true. Blue is also one of our colors, and purple.
Yes.
Wow, she threw that back in my face. Well done. I respect it. But yeah, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and this is something that we have actually had a lot of personal conversations about, and we've been wanting to do this episode for a long time, and we kind of waited until it was a good time in our lives where we both felt like we could talk about it. And what a better month when it's on our minds anyway.
It's on our minds. It's very much in the forefront of your face. I have a lot of mixed emotions during this month. And I'm curious, I know you just recently had your scare,
Yes.
if you will. And that's kind of what prompted us to talk about this, because there were a lot of emotions of going through this process of trying to figure out, is this cancer or is it not cancer? And I know you're not the only one who's gone through this. And I'm sure there's many women out there who are dealing with this on a yearly basis.
Yeah, in fact, I was just kind of looking up the most recent stats I could find on it to see if it was still what I thought in my mind. And it's something like about 1 in every 8 women
Wow.
will get breast cancer. That's roughly 13%. And that is a very, very eye-opening stat. I do also want to point out that means 7 and 8 will not. It's not like a, horrible thing to fear. That's not the message that we want to send out, but it is something to really talk about and raise awareness. And I know it's something that's really personal to you because it's something that has really affected your family and is something that has affected the way that you are planning out your life too. So this is a great time, I think, for both of us to share a little bit of our stories, because I know a lot of people will be able to relate to them and just kind of share our thoughts on breast cancer during Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Yeah. And like you said, 7 in 8 women will not get breast cancer. And that's awesome. And for that 1 in 8, it's not a death sentence. And so that's something to really keep in mind too, as we're talking about these things. One of the best ways to handle the situation is through having your proactive screening. So whether you have a family history or just you're a woman, so we're supposed to do our own self-checks, go into your doctor regularly so that you can be checked, so that you can catch things when they're early. Early detection is key as far as being able to treat breast cancer and keeping it from spreading to other parts. So it's not something to take a head in the sand approach. Did you want to share your story first, or do you want me to share mine?
I could start with mine.
Okay.
So I will start off with breast cancer. It was something I've heard about my whole life, especially being a woman. We've all seen all the pink out there during October. It's not something I really ever gave a lot of thought to, but I do remember learning maybe in health class how to do a self exam and that you should do it every month. And that's honestly not something that I really did because it was something that made me very anxious. And I am just the personality, when things make me anxious, I avoid it. That being said, I don't have a high risk of breast cancer. I have absolutely no breast cancer that runs in my family. And on top of that, I don't have any cancer that runs in my family. So I'm in a genetically really great place, which is not the case for everybody. I don't know all of the best recommendations on this. I know Bekah is probably a lot more knowledgeable about all of this because it is something that has affected her family. But there are like genes that you can get tested for. And I haven't been tested for them, but my mom has been and doesn't carry the breast cancer gene. So I'm very, very low risk. I've never really done like regular self-exams, but I try to when I can. And I did find a lump earlier this year. So at the time that we're recording this, I want to say it was about 8 months ago. And that is like a really scary feeling, I think, because you always hear about the cancer and it just always happened to somebody else. It was never my aunt. It was never my grandma. It was never my mom. It's just somebody else. Like you don't really see like that happening to you. So I found a lump and I knew I was smart enough to call my doctor and make an appointment to go get it checked out. And I did that pretty quickly. And when I went in, I went to the appointment. I remember I went by myself thinking it would be like no big deal. Surely like every other, what has felt like a big health scare in my life, it'll be like a big fat nothing. It's probably not even a lump. It's just, unusual.
I remember
And
the voice messages. You're like, I don't think it's probably nothing.
it's
but
probably nothing, which by the way, there is different types of breast tissue. So for some women, it is harder to like feel these lumps and detect cancer.
Yeah, some women have more dense breast tissue. Some people have more cysts. So that's just fluid-filled sacs, and sometimes that can cause some confusion.
I was just getting an annual wellness exam, and then I mentioned that, and she did an exam, and I told her where I had found it, and she immediately said, "Oh yes." Then she said, "Actually, there's a second one," and that I hadn't even found. And like the minute that she said that, it was just this like numbness and like disbelief all over my body. So I was like, wait a minute, this was supposed to be one of those hypochondriac things where I like thought I found a lump and you're supposed to say, no, you're fine. You can go home like another clean bill of health. So it was like immediately felt pretty scary. And the doctor handled it like so good. I just really hope that other women in this situation get a doctor.
Yes.
Because I really needed that, being alone in that moment and feeling very alone in that moment. And she said, we're going to need you to come back in, do diagnostics, and she said, I'm not going to order a biopsy right away because you're young and you seem so healthy and it doesn't run in your family and you're very, very low risk. So she did schedule a mammogram and an ultrasound. I had never had either of these before. I believe they recommend, at least my doctor recommends, and I think probably doctors, that you start getting routine mammograms or some of the other imaging technology maybe out there at the age of 40.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what, a mammogram? Like, not 40 yet. Like, that's okay. That sounds scary, but I'm sure it's nothing. And I just wanted to get it done that day, and we couldn't get it done that day. I live on in a kind of a small town. There's not a lot of like medical resources. So I had to come back another day, and that was kind of agonizing because I was like, oh, this is going to be weighing on me. Still like, I'm sure it's nothing. I'm sure it's nothing. I don't remember the exact timeline, probably within a week. Got in, maybe 2 weeks, and went to the appointment like thinking I would be totally fine and it would be no big deal. And I had friends and family members who offered to come to that appointment with me. And I was like, no, I can go. And as soon as I like stepped into the doctor's office, it was so hard and so scary. And that was really, really unexpected. The mammogram, by the way, is not that big of a deal. I thought it was going to be like way, way, way worse than it was. It's not comfortable, but it wasn't like at all as bad as I thought it was going to be. However, standing there and getting it and just feeling so scared and alone, like I want to say this just in case it makes anybody else feel less alone, because I was really embarrassed in the moment. I was uncontrollably shaking and crying and like trying to get it together.
It's emotional. It's an emotional experience because it's scary.
And then got through that. It wasn't that bad. And then got the ultrasound. And I think that's when I like got really overwhelmed and like really wish that I had brought somebody to the appointment. So that would be something I could recommend if that's an option for you, is to like, if you are having maybe even just routine, but if it's like diagnostic, to have somebody with you. Because I just remember laying like on a table and then having an ultrasound machine, and I'd also never gotten an ultrasound in my life. And just like thinking, this isn't what I visualized for my life. I didn't think I'd be getting an ultrasound for breast cancer in my 30s. that I'd be alone. I didn't even know they did ultrasounds for this. I thought this is like when you're having a baby and you have somebody sitting next to you and you have a doctor. And that was like a really hard moment.
Yeah.
It's okay. But I didn't think I would still get emotional about this.
I already have my tissues because I know I'm going. That's like why I've been delaying. It's because I'm like, I know I'm going to cry. But I'm like, I know we need to talk about this. Are you okay?
Yeah. Because I knew even if it was something like that, prognosis and the outlook was like probably pretty good. I don't even think it was like that I was so afraid of. I think it was just that moment of like everything it just brought up and reminded me of that I'm like single woman, that I don't have kids, that I'm not here with a partner for a baby. And by the way, I've never like even saw that for my life, but it was just a reminder of that. And that for the same reasons, I feel like that wasn't my life, did my body develop? Because I had these doctors like telling me how low risk I am. And they're right. I was really low risk because I'm so healthy. And I knew I look really healthy and I have good genetics. But because of everything going on the inside and things that I've been through and things that for the same reason I'm sitting here alone, I know that can form disease in your body. And it was just a reminder of like how much silent, invisible illness we can carry. Not just me, but women everywhere.
Yeah.
That even a doctor like can't see. And just like all the fear that can come from that. And then just also all the feeling of, did I give myself lumps? Did I give myself cancer? Did I give myself something else? Is this something I did to my body? Yeah, so it brought up a lot of unexpected emotions. And then the torture of waiting for the results too, because
it doesn't come instantly.
It doesn't come instantly.
Should. They should give you like same day results. My goodness, like the waiting weeks to get a reply it's torture.
Yeah. Which mine actually did come in fairly quickly. I can't remember how quickly, but within a week, like definitely within a week. So it wasn't waiting for that long. And it was a little frustrating because being a real estate agent, like we're working during the day and I missed the call, but my results came in. The first thing that they said on the voicemail that they left me was like, this is really good news. Like it's really good news. And it didn't really show any signs of anything cancerous. And they did note that I did have the kind of breast tissue where it was a little bit harder to find, and that we had a couple of options. We would be doing diagnostics every 6 months. So the same thing I did, I would be doing again. And they said it was like absolutely the right thing to come in and get it checked out. So I do want to emphasize that to people, even if you're just like questioning it like I was. And if you're like, surely this wasn't a thing. But then they also said, or we could have surgery and then you won't have to worry about this anymore. And I was like, oh, surgery? Like, what? Like, that was like a whole nother decision. I was like, yay, I want to just celebrate that this is good. But like, now I'm going to have to worry about this like all the time, every 6 months, or I should get surgery. And what is that going to entail? And so that was like a thing kind of weighing on me for a long time. And that I kind of put off. I was like, okay, I'll go in and have the consultation for the surgery and just see what it would be. And it was really, really hard to get good medical advice. Like I had, I won't say that like my doctors and people weren't good, but it was like, I just wanted somebody to tell me what to do. Because I'm not somebody who wants to go get surgery needlessly, but I'm not somebody who wants to not deal with something that could be so preventable. And so it was really hard to find like good medical information and good advice. And I talked to people who have had breast cancer and had mastectomies. I talked to people who have had lumpectomies, and I still couldn't get like a good. So I think that if I felt that way, I'm sure a lot of women feel that way, where you're like, I don't know what the right thing to do is here. But it kind of, I was stressed out about it for that 6 months until the next diagnostics. And I decided, okay, I'll do the surgery because that is what the conclusion of, after talking to like most of my family members that they thought was the best route to go. But I said, I want to do one more diagnostic and see what comes back. So I did that. Now that happened pretty recently. And then I went in and met with the surgeon and got another exam. And they basically said that 6 month mark on the reexamination that they don't recommend surgery. And so it was like, it was the for finding a lump on your breast, like I was the absolute best case scenario. And so I'm so, so grateful for that. And even so, the process and the emotions and the decisions that I agonized over were hard. It just makes me really commend the women who have gotten a less good prognosis
Mm-hmm.
at whatever stage they were in, because I can't even imagine how hard that would be. And it also was pretty interesting to talk to a lot of different women about it, because I realized a lot of these things like are not as uncommon. Like how many women I had known and was personal friends with that are like, oh yeah, I found lumps and this happened, and
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, this happened, and oh yeah, this happened. Like it's not this thing to feel so alone in. It's so, unfortunately, it's so common.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes you do need to be like your own like medical advocate and
Absolutely.
do your own research and get as many opinions as you can and reach out to like your friends for support. I know Becca's somebody I reached out to before because as she's going to share in a minute, like this is something that has affected her and her family in a much more profound way than what I went through this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I loved it. I would love
But,
to hear more about you.
that doesn't diminish your feelings or your experience at all. Like
Yeah.
you said, this is something that a lot of women have gone through, that, those feelings of feeling alone. How is this going to affect my future? And just all the emotions and the fear that goes with that. That's
Yeah.
normal. Unfortunately. It's like I wish that none of us had to go through anything like this, but that is a very normal and common feeling and experience, unfortunately. But yeah, for me, for my story, I do have that family history of breast cancer. So my grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 39. And so because of that, my mom and my aunt, they started doing their
Wow.
screenings earlier than most women, earlier than you need to. So I believe it was at 44. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was found in one of her routine mammograms. They figured out in the 1990s that there was a gene, the BRCA gene, that is now called the breast cancer gene. And so when you have that gene, you are more likely to get breast cancer. And then you're also more likely to have it again. So for mom, with her getting breast cancer, she had the option of doing like a lumpectomy or just doing some sort of radiation treatment. She opted to go for the double mastectomy because it reduced her chances of getting cancer again. Whereas if she had kept her breast and not had these surgeries, she was almost guaranteed to get breast cancer a second time. And she didn't want to do that.
Wow.
With the BRCA gene, it's not only tied to breast cancer, it's also tied to ovarian cancer. So it's this genetic mutation that is attracted to estrogen. And so the best way to prevent it is to remove those things that are creating estrogen in your body. So she ended up doing the double mastectomy and a hysterectomy. So removing her ovaries at the same time. Or maybe it wasn't a hysterectomy, but don't quote me on what it is. But I know I'm pretty sure it was a hysterectomy though. So she had that at the same time. She went through 2 surgeries.
Wow.
Because there's also the reconstruction surgery. And then it was recommended that I also go and do the genetic testing, since now I have 2 family members who have breast cancer who are close relatives and this genetic. So 22, I went and got my genetic testing done. I'm also BRCA positive. And I remember when I got the call, I was on my way to a girls' weekend in Miami with a friend. And the gal on the phone, she was super nice. She's like, yeah, we got your test results back and you are positive. And I was just kind of quiet on the phone because what do you say to that? And she's like, I'm so sorry. I was like, okay, thanks. I guess, now I just know that everything that makes me a woman is going to kill me one day. Or at least, I'm very pragmatic about things and I'm very practical. And so I had already decided that if I was positive when I got the results back, that in the future, I would do a double mastectomy, prophylactic treatment, and I would also get a hysterectomy. And again, just take out everything that makes me uniquely female. And that's hard to do when you're 22. And it's hard to see your mom go through surgeries and have, they have to put drains in. So I was avoiding because I knew I was going to cry. I've been crying all month because, well, I love that. like October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That also makes it very aware in my head, everything that's happened,
Yeah.
everything that will happen. So yes, let's raise awareness. There's been so many strides in the research, but it puts my own choices that are coming up. So again, 22, figuring this out, met with mom's surgeon, and she's like, yeah, with your family history and the genetics, you basically have a 90% chance of getting breast cancer. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So you have to start doing screenings every 6 months, alternating between getting a mammogram and an MRI, because mammograms do have a lot of radiation. And if you're getting mammograms twice a year, that is really unhealthy for your body. And so I was like, all right, fine, we'll move forward with that. My gynecologist at the time was not able to write prescriptions for mammograms and be able to screen them or review them. So I had to find a new gynecologist. And so I did research. I was able to find one in the Orlando area who specialized with breast cancer, with the BRCA gene specifically. And I was like, perfect, let me go and see this doctor, make her my regular since she is familiar with these things and she will be able to help me through this process and guide me when the time comes, because I decided at 35 I would do that prophylactic double mastectomy. And I hadn't decided yet if I was going to do a hysterectomy at the same time, because those are two major surgeries to do at the same time. But if I opted not to do it at the same time, I knew that was me opting for 3 major surgeries between the initial mastectomy, reconstruction, and then hysterectomy after that. Something else to keep in mind is when you get your ovaries taken out, you go into menopause, and you can't take what they usually do when you're going into menopause is you take estrogen treatments to help regulate that. You can't do that when you have a BRCA gene, because that's what the cancer is attracted to. No, there's other things you have to do for that. So I found a new doctor, and I had my plan. At this time, the BRCA gene was not as well known in the medical world, which is crazy to think about. This is in the, in the 2010s, during that time. And BRCA gene was discovered in 1990s. So it's only been around for 30 years. Yeah.
Didn't realize that.
Yeah. So again, lots of progress has been made since my grandmother had breast cancer. But I remember going in to get my first mammogram done, and they rejected me because I was too young. And so the radiologist said, I'm not going to do this mammogram on you because you're too young and it's too young for you to start this. I'm like, I have a prescription. I have the family history. Why are you fighting with me on this? I'm like, I'm taking them out in 15 years anyway. So it's not like I'm going to be doing this for the next 30, 40 years. But he wasn't aware. He was not familiar with the situation. He was just going off of what the standard was, which was at 22 years old, you don't need a mammogram. Whereas my mom's surgeon was talking about how she had seen an increase in women under 30 coming in with late stage breast cancer because they didn't know. They didn't know that they needed to be getting screened. They weren't doing their self-exams. The standards that have been set up until this point aren't taking account for everything. So this is why you have to be your own advocate. And so I had to fight and continue to go back. And every single time I would go back, I had to argue with them to be able to do my screenings every 6 months. So I will always support people and tell people that you should be your own medical advocate. You hope that the medical professionals have done their research and that they're staying up to date on everything that's happening, but it's not always the case. And sometimes you do have to push, you do have to be the squeaky wheel, and you do have to advocate for yourself and for what's in your best interest. So here we are, 35. I know kids weren't ever part of your plan, Amber. For me, having kids has always been part of my plan. Figured by now I would be married and I would have my kids, and I'd be ready to go through that process of taking everything out. I wanted to have surgery when I was younger because when you're younger, your body is able to handle intensive things a little bit better. It's going to be easier to go through the healing process when I'm younger versus 40s, 50s, and so on. It was this unique, yet not unique, but it was this shared experience that I wish I had seen when I was 21, 22 and finding out about all of this versus at 33, because I think maybe I wouldn't have felt as alone in the situation of like, okay, yeah, like I'm not the only person who's feeling like this. This is normal. You don't have to take a fatalistic approach to life in this situation. Not impossible, but again, being very practical about things. So in many ways, we talked last week, or we talked in our regrets episode about these grieving, or was it our regrets episode, or was it
a few episodes ago?
or the I Kiss Dating Goodbye? I don't know if that's going to be our episode title or not, but
spoiler alert, it wasn't, but we can still change it. It's okay. It's all right. But we're just trying to confuse the audience right now. It's all good.
It's okay. Whatever. The kissing dating goodbye episode. Whatever I talked about that. We've talked about some different grieving processes that we've gone through.
I think that this is a really, really strong theme with a lot of our episodes, this grieving process that you're talking about, because it's something that really affects women. Yeah. And what assuming that you're talking about probably specifically for you is this grieving process of you thought by now your life would look some sort of way and that you assume that you'd be ready to have these surgeries, and now you're having to like probably make decisions that were already hard, maybe a little bit harder for you now, like on timelines. And I know for me, I wanted to point out the fact that I have not been somebody who necessarily always wanted kids. I've had periods in my life where I have and where I have not. And I feel like I assumed being a little girl, it would just be like a natural thing that happened or didn't, or that I would want or whatever. And my life didn't turn out that way. So it was very interesting going through this breast cancer stuff from a different point of view of life as you, and still feeling that intense grieving, because you can want something or not, but even grieving like options being taken away, I think is something that is very uniquely more a female experience than a male experience because of our biology and because we are the ones that human life, and because this biological clock thing is real and it affects everything in our life, from our careers, our relationships, the way the world values us, the way that we value ourselves, whether for right or wrong. And so it is such an emotional reaction. And so you grieving that through the eyes of just what you saw your mom go through, and then grieving that at 21 of what your future might be, and then these decisions you made very young. And then at 35 to be in it. It's 35, by the way. They medically call now like a geriatric pregnancy.
It's a geriatric pregnancy. Like, I never thought I would be one of those girls who had the ticking clock.
Yeah.
Just what, even after this diagnosis, I don't know that that's a correct thing, but even after finding out that I'm BRCA positive, I didn't feel clock ticking away. I wasn't really worried about things. I was like, that's 15, 20 years in the future, everything's going to be fine. I'm not too worried about it in this moment. I'm really good at boxing things up, which may or may not be a good thing. But I still mourned. There was still a mourning and a grieving that was happening in the background. There was a grieving for my womanhood. There was a grieving for my body. There was a grieving for myself. Like, I know that sounds like maybe selfish or weird, but like I felt really bad for myself, for my future self, that I was going to have to go through this.
That's interesting that you now are thinking like that felt a little bit selfish, because I think a lot of people feel that way. But I think if you don't go through those feelings of grieving things, whether it's like, oh, you find out you like can't have kids maybe, or maybe you aren't married at a certain time, or maybe you do get a diagnosis that's going to change your life, or you've made the decision that you will have at minimum a preventative mastectomy, and grieving what makes you feel and essentially is like what makes us women. I think that is a necessary part of the process, and I do not think it makes you selfish, and I do not think it puts you in the wrong direction. I think it's something you have to go through to move forward. I think you have to. I think that is something that I hope our listeners hear. And I think feeling uncomfortable a little bit with the grieving, like, oh, I'm wallowing or feeling sorry for myself, or pitying myself or focusing on myself too much is the wrong thing to do. I think that's a way that we've been like conditioned often as women. And I think you grieving that and you sharing that with us is going to help people to hear. And I think it's necessary.
I hope so. I know for me, coming to Washington, having to find all new doctors, and then 2 years ago when I was going through those very irregular cycles, where bleeding excessively, which could be a sign of cancer, I definitely had a freak out moment where I'm like, oh no, is this cancer? Is this it? Has it finally kicked in? And I got it earlier than everybody else in my family because my aunt was also diagnosed with breast cancer 2 years after my mom, but they found hers in stage 0 through one of her routine screenings. So again, get your routine screenings done. Don't skip them because they could save your life. But I'm looking for a doctor, and I'm looking for one who has the BRCA specialty here in Washington. Wasn't able to find one, which was insane to me. But I did find a lot of resources. Started reading the stories of other women who had also gotten their diagnosis, and reading their thoughts and reading their stories, it was like word for word the thoughts I had, the feelings at action, which is kind of what I did of, well, there's nothing I can really do. So I guess I'll just be depressed. But yeah, then that's why we're talking about this, because we do hope that this can be encouragement, or at least let you know that you're not alone. There is community in this. There is support in this. It's not something that you have to, yes, you can grieve, you can mourn, but you don't have to be alone in going through that or feel weird or feel selfish. That encouraged me, Amber, hearing that, because I think we do, I don't know, it's like we discourage ourselves instead of encouraging ourselves as we go through these situations, or we try to minimize our feelings and emotions when it comes to us. It's not something we would ever do to our friends. You know, we will bear our friends' burdens. We will come alongside them. We will be their hype man, but we don't do the same thing for ourselves. We need to.
It's so true. That's why this community that you and I are working to create with the girls in the market, I think is so important. It's so important to surround yourself, particularly with other women as a woman, and find the right people who can mirror back what you need in that moment. Because we're all strong in different moments, and we're all so much harder on ourselves than we are on the people around us.
The other element of all of this, of wanting to have kids, wanting to be married, now I know that I have this genetic thing that I can pass on to my kids. There is the extra element of, am I lovable? Is someone going to want to be with someone that is guaranteed to have to go through some pretty intensive surgeries, recovery, possibly going to pass this on to our children? Is this something that disqualifies me from being an eligible partner? And that's something I've struggled with through the years, especially as I've gotten older and allegedly become less desirable in the dating market because of all these crazy things out there. But it's how do you navigate that conversation with somebody that you're dating?
Yeah.
And thankfully, the few men that I have had that conversation, so I'm not going to have this. This is not a first date conversation. But as things start to get more serious, or you start to get more emotionally connected, it is a conversation. It is something that I bring up. And thankfully, they've all been super cool about it, which I'm very thankful for. And so it's when you choose your partner, it's in sickness and in health, for better, for worse. Those are the things I'm looking at when I'm looking at these dating partners. Is this someone who's going to be able to stand by me throughout something like this, who's going to be steadfast and solid and be able to support me?
Yeah, I imagine that's challenging for you when dating people. I kind of look at Bekah as like my dating idol, if you haven't picked up on that on the podcast, because
Let's go with guru.
Her guru, because she seems to navigate it from my perspective so well and with such strength. And so this is something I never thought about that you go through when dating. This is something that is obviously so important. So like with a deal breaker with a future partner, but finding that right time, bring it up and have these conversations is challenging. It isn't really a first date thing, probably for
No.
most people, but you don't want to wait too long either to have these conversations. But also, what a
Exactly.
gift to get to know the response somebody gives you and how they can love you through that. Because I think about it, I would never think about that as being something that would make somebody unlovable. That's me as your friend mirroring that back to you. But I also know from being on the other side of things and having those same feelings about other things that have made me feel unlovable
Yeah.
that just the right people would never see. But I
Mhm.
didn't even think about this being something that has made dating a little bit difficult.
It's an extra layer.
Yeah.
And so it made, like, for me, it's I have a genetic mutation that means I'm gonna get cancer. My kids might get cancer. And I'm also gonna have a major surgery. For other people, it could be, hey, I have this mental health thing. Hey, I have trauma or another disease that is an element or another genetic mutation situation that is outside of our control. It's just it's a factor. And it's hard to know when to have those conversations. It's hard to know when to bring that up. And do you bring it up? Yes, you should. Spoiler. You definitely should bring it up at some point. But not everybody deserves to know everything about you. So that's why I base it off of, and my recommendation would be to base it off of where's your emotional connection with this person? Do you see this going somewhere? Does this person have that potential for like long-term partnership? In which case you do need to bring it up at that point
Yeah.
before you get maybe too invested. So I'm usually doing it like within the first 5 dates, because if we've made it that far, then there's some emotions there and I see there being more potential. But it's also soon enough that if we're breaking it off, it's not like devastating. And it's you owe them this option to say, hey, you know what? I'm not the right fit for this. But the right person, it's not going to affect how they see you. The right person will still care about you and love you and cherish you no matter what. So that's my encouragement on that. And it's not like there's only one person who's going to do that. Like there are, like I said, the few men that I have told about this have handled it with so much grace, so much poise. It was not a deal breaker for them. They were very kind. They were very caring through that. And I really appreciate that about them. And it made it easier with each person that I told.
I want to ask you some questions. Just share what you're comfortable sharing or what you
Okay.
know, and maybe you don't. But I'm curious, now that you are 35 and you've hit a new phase of this journey, are there any like new decisions you've made about choices as far as getting preventative surgery? Has it changed what you're thinking for having kids? Is this something that's just kind of still in process and you're still processing and figuring out?
Yeah. So, I said before that the last couple of years I've been grieving the idea of having children, and maybe I might never have kids. And it's because of the ticking clock. That's now very much, I was coming up to 35 and I was like, all right, I'll probably have to bump this back to 40. But then there's the grandmother got diagnosed with cancer at 39, mom got diagnosed at 44. I don't really want to go beyond that for my treatment. So then there's also the aspect of I want to enjoy being married to my husband for a year or so before we add children in. And then who knows if we'll be able to get pregnant right away. And so all of this starts to add time. So like, let's say I got married next year. So I'll be 36. And then a year or two of marriage, that puts me at 38. If I get pregnant right away, cool. But I also want 3 kids. So
Yeah.
it's like all these things start to just go in my brain as far as timelines. And I'm like, I don't know what's realistic. I don't know what's in God's plan. And so right now it's, if I can have one child, that would be something. That would be to me, that would be a miracle. That would be my miracle baby. And I would be so thankful for that. At the same time, if that's not God's plan, If there's something else out there, I know that he has my best in mind. His plan is the best thing. And so I love being an auntie. There's so
Yeah.
many, like, my friends have so many kids. Like, there's so many other ways to love on people. There's adoption, but I wouldn't want to adopt without a partner.
I think some of the big themes of this episode and a lot of our episodes, I think it's really important that we're putting this conversation out into the world because it's so important that people feel empowered medically and what you can control as far as like preventative, that we raise awareness to that. And also by sharing our stories and, you know, even the embarrassing part of me shaking and sobbing at the doctor's office, if that
Which
makes
is
me a
not
little less scared to go.
embarrassing. Not
Yeah, like,
embarrassing at all.
that is one of it. But then the other part that I'm like really feeling for me right now is there's a lot of things in life that we just have to surrender to.
Yeah.
We have to surrender. We can only control so much. We can only make so many plans. And the rest is just, it's not really up to us. And that's part of life too, right? Isn't it? We never thought we'd be here podcasting together.
No. And that's the thing we've talked a lot about. It's like looking back at our lives 5 years ago, I don't think either of us saw us being right here where we are.
Not at all. Not anywhere close.
No.
Also, both for better and worse. Like there are things in both of our lives I think are so much more amazing than what we could have thought. Also, some things that we isn't
Could do
what the
without.
story we would have written for ourselves if they let us in the writer's room, right?
Right. Like I would like to speak with
Yes, we have
whoever's
notes.
putting together these plot lines.
We have notes. Lazy writing. No, just kidding. But yeah, there's a lot of the breast cancer journey and this journey of being female, and for Bekah and for her family members and for so many other women, it's your like childbearing years and your ability to have kids and the timing of relationships and family planning is so tied into it. And to not be able to control that, and on top of that, have so much of the value the world gives us be based on that's a lot to carry, and we gotta surrender sometimes.
Yeah, you gotta surrender
Grieve and
sometimes.
surrender.
There's the other side. I know some people would be like, well, why didn't you just get married sooner? Why didn't you just settle down years ago if this was so important to you? Because I think we've all probably had an opportunity in our lives to marry somebody or to date somebody that would probably want to marry you. And I would say, don't settle. I stand by that so firmly. Like I look back at my life and I know I could have been married by now and I could have had children by now. But I also look at the men that I've dated. I'm like, I don't think any of them would have been that right fit. I think they would have been the person that I was just trying to make work because I had other goals. And so if you're also in that situation and you feel that biological clock ticking, or you feel this countdown because things haven't exactly gone the way that you thought that they would, please do not settle. At the same time, as much as I would love to have children, I don't want to be miserable with the wrong partner.
You know what? When we try to control our lives, it does not work out any better. If anything, it's worse. It's sometimes the more difficult choice because of the pressures that we face, that we put on ourselves, that other people put on us, to realize that just getting to the end is not the point. Like that's not the ultimate goal. You got to do things the right way and what's best for you. And that's really going to be best for everybody in the end. Hey, I had one other question for you before we wrap this up.
Okay.
What do you think the best way or ways there are to support somebody as they're going through this journey, since it has touched your family on a personal level? If you have a friend who is diagnosed with breast cancer or go anywhere on the journey, what do you think are some of the best ways to support them?
Yeah, I think being there for them, just as a friend, and that's just it's not necessarily like asking them to talk about it all the time, but being that ear when they do want to talk about it. I don't think it hurts to ask how somebody is doing or how they're feeling or how they're holding up or handling it, but not pressing on it if it's not something that they want to talk about in the moment, because that's grief. So it's showing up for somebody how you would somebody who's grieving, because it is a grieving process. You may not be, especially if you're early on in it, it may not be that you are it may not be a death sentence in that moment if it's early stage. But if you're having to have major surgery or anything like that, or you have this genetic thing, and just know that you're going to have to take things out of your body, there is grief that goes along with that. So be a friend, show up, be support. If it's after surgery, bring them food, help them clean their house, be there with them, show them love, show them care, kindness. But just a lot comes out of just being in community, honestly. And just here's my shoulder if you want to lean on it. Here's my ear if you want to talk it off. And it's just letting them know that it's always a safe space, that it's never annoying to rehash the same things over and over and over again, because sometimes we need to do that when we're processing our grief.
We definitely.
Not minimizing. Here's what not to do, because I've shared about this on my stories before when I've gone in for my mammograms, because let's raise awareness. This guy, he comes into my DMs and he's like, oh, just stop wearing deodorant and you won't have to worry about getting breast cancer. And I'm like, I have a genetic situation here. Like, deodorant is not the problem. He's like, oh, you'll be fine then.
I do remember one of my colleagues whose cancer really, really touched her family. Her sister died of breast cancer. Her mom had gone through breast cancer. She went through breast cancer. One of the things she finally had to start telling people was like, I know that so many of your natural and healthy and all the kinds of suggestions and advice she was getting is well-intentioned, but it became very unhelpful for her, because she's like, trust me, I'm doing everything that I can. And it gets to feel probably like minimizing your feelings and your problems and everything that you've gone through, which people do not know based on your social media stories. You do not know what people are battling and how much effort they put into things. That can become unhelpful. So I think that's probably good advice all around. If they come to you asking for like, hey, have you been through this? What do you think of? Maybe, but don't unsolicited medical advice, well-intentioned nutrition advice is probably difficult. And not helpful.
Yeah. Like I'm a crunchy girl. I love naturopathic medicine and doing things as natural as you can. And that can help be preventative for some things. I'm a firm believer that if you exercise and eat well and have emotional regulation, that will help stave off most illnesses. It's just like healthy lifestyle. But once somebody has a diagnosis, if somebody actually is actively going through cancer, please keep your essential oils to yourself. This is not the time or the place to do any sort of unsolicited medical advice. Unless it's like, oh, you're feeling nauseous. Would you want some peppermint? Or like something like that. Be like, can I help you with this? But not like, oh, we can cure your cancer with my peppermint oil or by just not wearing deodorant or any number of other things.
So I think that we should all keep these things in mind. Thanks for sharing that with us, Bekah. It's good to have personal perspectives. And I want to encourage everybody to, because I'm committing right now to doing this, because I've shared that it's something I don't always do and it's a struggle, of doing my monthly self-breast exam. So I want to encourage all the listeners to, all the female listeners, do men do self-breast exams? Because breast cancer does affect men too.
It does.
Okay,
so
all you dudes out there, let's all do our self-exams and DM us and let us know you did them and remind me to do them, and we'll all do them together. And it's not as scary as some of us let it up to be in our head.
Yeah, we're not going to actually do it together. Everyone do it separately in the comfort and privacy of your own homes.
Yes.
We will trust that you're doing it. You don't need to send us any video or any other evidence that you've done it. Just, honor system here, folks.
It is sad that you do need to point that out, Riley.
Like, it's the internet. Like,
girl in the market problems.
Like, hey, you want to see my exam? No, I don't.
No.
Never, ever, never in the history of ever do I want to see that.
Although I will say my biggest regret of my
this isn't the regrets episode, Amber.
But I will say they showed me my recent imaging at the doctor's office, and it was really cool looking, and I regret not taking a picture of it. After this, I'm gonna email my doctor and see if I can get a copy of it. the human body is fascinating.
Yes.
I was a biology major, in case you didn't tune into season 1, okay?
I will say I've had some funny moments through this, and I try to make light of it all because humor is the best medicine. So I've had trivia team names that are the pre-op boob jobs with my other
Ooh.
friends who want to get boob jobs. There's other ways that you can make light of things, but I will say, men, you're not allowed to. This is a female only thing. Because there's been times men have commented on, they're like, oh, nice, you're going to have a boob job. And I'm like, no, stop.
No.
You cannot comment on this. Women, you are welcome to. Men, just take a back seat on this one.
Just good advice in general.
Yeah.
This was an important one. I'm glad that we did it.
Yeah. Emotional, of course. I've been feeling heaviness this whole month, but us talking about it helped in a weird way. And I really appreciate your vulnerability too today, Amber, and talking about your experiences. And I hope that whoever's listening, I hope you can also feel encouraged. And our DMs are open. If you want to talk about anything, if you just need an ear or a shoulder or a virtual hug, or if you see us at one of our conferences, feel free to come over and give us an actual hug. We'll welcome it. But yeah, we're all just girls in the market. We're here to support each other through the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a review. It really helps people find this podcast. You can shoot those messages to us on Instagram at @2 Girls in the Market. You can listen to our podcast on any of the podcast place. What's your favorite podcast place?
I use it on Apple.
She's an Apple girl. I like Spotify.
Ooh.
We're on both, or YouTube. And check us out on the gram. Reach out. Can't wait to hear from you. Till next time.
Until next time.
Check
happy
your
day.
boobies.